Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the good news today, and thank goodness for Governor Tom Wolf. The Senate, rushed through Senate Bill 1300, which would have limited the mail-in ballots, which capped early voting, would have cut voter registration time. Some of the craziness that we're seeing in Georgia and elsewhere. They pushed it through, sent it to the governor's desk, and he said, no, we're not doing that here. We want people to vote. We don't want obstacles to the ballot box. And I think it's a good thing. And here to share some thoughts, I've asked Pennsylvania State Senator Art Haywood to come talk with us. Senator, thanks for taking time for us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rick, for inviting me on.
So this was not a surprise. I think everybody knew this was going to get a veto. Thoughts?
Yes, everyone did know it was going to be vetoed. The governor announced it. We discussed it in the Senate during the debate. So it was no surprise. And also, this is a piece of legislation that had a solution looking for a problem. We had no fraud here in Pennsylvania. And so this is a lot of legislation to make it more difficult for folks to vote. And I've got a few reasons that I voted against it to share at the appropriate time.
This is one of those things where, for me, I believe that we open up the ballot box, we get more people to vote, make it easier. We have technology that we can do a whole bunch of things. But yet there are still those out there that keep saying, no, we want to stick to that Tuesday. You got to show up on that Tuesday between 7 and 7 and cast your vote. And that's how we do things. And I'm like, I'll tell you, I liked voting by mail on the last election. I requested the ballot. They sent it to me. I filled it up. I dropped it in the box. They sent me an email and said, hey, we got it. We're all good. I liked that. I thought it was a good thing.
So did I. I mean, I voted by mail as well. It was very convenient. And one of the changes that was proposed that fortunately the governor vetoed was to limit the number of drop boxes in counties. Limit the hours that you could have drop boxes, a limited days. It'd only be 7 days prior to the election. Also inconvenient. Would require having election officials at the drop boxes. And that's one of the reasons they have the limited hours. And this is just all to make it more difficult to vote. The convenience we had last time was tremendous, and it needs to remain.
Yeah. See, now, if your concern is the box is unprotected, why don't we allocate money to have someone man the box for a much longer period of time? If that's really the concern, if you really don't trust our postal service, if you really think people are dishonest, then we should allocate the resources. Because at the end of the day, the sanctity of that ballot box, what comes out of that ballot box is what the foundation of this wonderful experiment of self-rule is really all about. When you booger with that, the rest comes crumbling down.
Yes. And they also have some signature guarantee, I guess I would call it requirements for mail-in ballots. They're anticipating some kind of sophisticated technology will be able to scan the signatures that are received and determine if they match what's on your voter registration. And your voter registration may have been completed 20, 30, 40 years from the time of your then current signature. So it's very challenging. And I don't think I would trust my signature verification to a computer.
No, and I know I wouldn't, because one of the things that I know, especially I've got friends who do this for a living. In California, the number one way to have a ballot stolen is to challenge the signatures. And they throw a bunch of ballots out because, well, we couldn't match the signatures. And I'll tell you this, I don't know about you. I'm sure you have beautiful penmanship. I'm sure you have the most flowery, kind of cursive. I grew up as a kid learning to write left-handed. The nuns literally beat that out of me. So I can't write with either hand. My signature never looks the same twice. And doctors go, wow, when are you going to learn to write? I don't want someone basing my ability to vote on my chicken scratch.
Yeah. So that was one of the standards that Governor Wolf rejected, and I'm glad that he did. The other was for voter identification at the actual place of voting. And you know that some people have registered to vote. You come in, you sign the book. You don't have to bring another set of signatures after the first time. Often the people who are in the voting locations overseeing the elections, they know the voters. They're their neighbors. And so further voter ID is just another barrier to getting people, making it easy to vote.
Yeah.
I think that was another reason that Governor Wolf vetoed this legislation.
What's interesting to me, Senator Haywood, is that the people that we found who committed voter fraud, the people who thought that they could put in someone else, the dead person's voter, their voting, their ballot, tended to be Republicans, the people who are pushing for this stuff. Now, look, you can say, look, we want that guy from 44 to be held accountable, and we do. We want the handful of people who have done this to be held accountable. But I got to be honest, throwing these kind of barriers up to catch a handful of people, I'm struggling with.
Yeah, and it's a tremendous challenge. This is going to make it more difficult for people to exercise the right to vote. In addition, one of the changes was to move the voter registration deadline back to 30 days. So it takes 30 days before the election, before individuals can, when they get cut off. The 15-day new rule really encouraged people to register to vote because sometimes, folks are really not paying attention to the election until it gets closer. So the current 15 days has made it much more possible for people to register to vote in time for the election. And we should keep in mind, there are states that have same-day voter registration.
So let me ask you this, because, good, I'm glad to hear that the governor has vetoed this. Nothing's going to change at this moment. One of the things that does concern me, and I'm not sure if you know what's going on, but I guess Pennsylvania has signed on to be one of these ERIC member states, the electronic registration information center states that from what I'm being told is kind of like the Kobach scheme to purge people off the voting rolls. Has Pennsylvania signed up for this, and are we against this? Are we for this? Where do you find yourself?
I talked to the Secretary of State, the current one who took over after the challenges with the putting the matter on the ballot. She seems very confident that this new system will help us because she indicated to me that there are several counties that are using some manual systems that are ripe for mistakes. So I currently, based upon what the Secretary of State has said to me, am cautiously optimistic that this will work and will bring some of our counties into the 21st century.
Yeah, because it's my view, honestly, to be honest, if there are dead people still on the rolls, I personally, I don't really care. As long as they're not voting. I mean, at the end of the day, it's who cast a ballot. That's what I'm worried about. I know there's a lot of, there are people on the voting rolls. Yeah, okay. Did they vote? That to me is the important part.
Yeah, I think it's good to have alive people on the voting rolls. So
not against it, but my fear is I see how this is played out in other places where they go, oh, well, all these people have been purged because now they're all dead. And you go knock on their door and there they are.
Yeah, that is a risk. And I have seen that examples actually in some other states. So I'm cautious that this will work. The Secretary of State that we have now, I think, is extremely competent, but that is a real concern.
Yeah.
One thing that is in the legislation was to provide for pre-canvassing so these counties can start to at least open up the envelopes a little earlier. The counties wanted 14 days to get that done. This legislation had 5 days, nothing like what the counties wanted, but we know that having the counties open up these envelopes on election day is far too late.
No, I think they should be the morning of. They should have already been counted. There should be a running tally. They should be held secret, and then the day, because we can't have another 2020 where Trump had 600,000 more votes on election night, and people, he won by a blowout when you didn't count half the people's votes, and then ultimately, unfortunately, he lost, and that. But you can't have the messaging that comes out of that. The last thing I did want to ask you about.
Confusion.
Last thing, before I let you go, the last thing I wanted to ask about is evidently you guys got some money for gun violence, about $30 million for gun violence prevention. Tell me a little bit about what that is.
Very glad that we got this through the budget. And it's going to, this $30 million will go to nonprofit organizations and others that have effective programs for gun violence prevention. And there are many. Let me just highlight Ceasefire Philly. they go to the hospitals, talk to the individuals after they've been shot to prevent retaliation. Retaliation is a big source of gun violence here. And so I'm very optimistic that these organizations that have a proven track record in reducing gun violence, once we can get them the resources, we can begin to reduce it.
Yeah, have you seen what they're doing in San Jose? I mean, they're charging people who have caused damage or injury while using a gun. It seems like, putting an economic side to this, where if you use your gun, you better be ready for the fine that comes with it.
I think accountability is very important in many aspects of life, particularly here in respect to using a gun. We've got a long way to go to deal with the gun religion that is really big in Pennsylvania.
The gun religion, I like that. I call it a gun fetish. You've gone religion, I go fetish. Same kind of thing. But ultimately, we want to make sure that people are safe. And so I wanted to ask you on this. So this, because I know some of my gun friends are gonna be all freaked out that there's money going to something that has to do with guns, and it isn't giving them more. This isn't a gun grabber thing, is it?
It is not. It is all about reaching people who have a high propensity for gun violence and pulling them out, putting them into productive activities. That's one example. Some other people may use counseling, some others, different approaches to reduce gun violence. But this focus is on those who are the criminals and trying to bring them out of that life.
Well, I'm glad you got something done. I'm glad we got a budget passed. I'm glad the governor vetoed this horrible legislation. We've got so much work to do. And Art, I appreciate you taking some time, sharing your thoughts on what's going on. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks for all that you do.
I appreciate your time. Our good friend, Pennsylvania State Senator Art Haywood. Look, at the end of this, the voter thing to me is really the most important part of what's going on. Make sure you're registered. Double check that as early and often. Don't let yourself be purged. While the senator thinks the Eric thing's going to be okay, I'm a little leery. Love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.